My name is Henry Peach, and for years I believed I was married to a devoted nurse who occasionally volunteered at our local parish. Turns out I was half right about her being a nurse, but completely mistaken about her devotion. It all began with a suitcase. Vivien was packing for what she called a medical conference in Chicago, 3 days of continuing education and networking with fellow healthcare professionals. Admirable stuff, the kind of thing a supportive spouse encourages, showing dedication to professional growth and patient care. I was carrying her coffee when I noticed something odd, a nun's habit, folded neatly beside her nursing uniform. And next to that, a 12-pack of condoms still in their pharmacy bag. My brain froze for a solid 30 seconds, trying to make sense of this like a computer running incompatible software. No costume, nurse's outfit, industrial supply of prophylactics, medical conference. Either Vivien had some very specific interests in continuing education, or this wasn't really about a conference. Honey, I called carefully, using that practiced neutrality honed over 17 years of marriage. What's with the costume? She came out of the bathroom, toothbrush in hand, looking like she'd been caught skimming from the church collection plate. Oh, the conference has a themed dinner, Saints and Sinners Night. You know how these medical events try to make things fun. She explained with the same professional confidence she always used when telling patients why they needed their medications. Saints and sinners, I repeated slowly in my mind, at a medical conference? It's about work-life balance, maintaining moral boundaries in healthcare. She was brushing her teeth, which made her words slightly foamy, very progressive thinking. And the condoms? She paused mid-brush. Through the mirror, I watched her eyes calculating how much truth to mix with the lie. Free samples, she finally said. The pharmaceutical rep wanted them handed out at the conference. Safe sex education is part of comprehensive health care. I nodded, pretending to understand. 12 seemed like a lot for just 3 days of seminars. But it's a big conference, I told myself. Must be. That night, while Vivien slept the peaceful sleep of someone whose story made perfect sense to them, I lay awake doing the math. 12 condoms, 3 days. Even if this was some avant-garde educational program, the numbers didn't add up. Unless Vivien planned a very hands-on demonstration. The next morning she left for the airport, kissing my cheek and promising to call every evening. Standard business trip protocol, except for the part where I followed her to the parking garage and saw her pull a small needle from her purse. She spent 5 minutes carefully puncturing each condom package. I'm not a medical professional, but I'm fairly certain piercing prophylactics defeats their primary purpose. Unless the purpose isn't protective, unless the purpose is reproductive, unless my wife of 17 years is trying to conceive with someone else. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after she drove off, watching other travelers load their luggage and wondering when my marriage had become a daytime drama. Then I went home and began what any reasonable husband would do when faced with evidence of an elaborate deception. I started investigating. Vivien's phone records were surprisingly easy to access. We shared a family plan, and I handled all the bills. Amazing how transparent life becomes when you aren't actually hiding anything. Too bad Vivien hadn't realized that. The most frequently dialed number over the past 3 months wasn't her hospital, her mother, or any of her nursing friends. It was a local number I didn't recognize. A man answered on the second ring. Garrett? Depends on who's asking. In the background I heard power tools, the scrape of metal on concrete. Maybe a construction site or fabrication shop. This is Henry Peach. I'm calling about my wife Vivien. Long pause. Then, oh, Duck. Oh, Duck is right, Garrett. Congratulations, by the way. What, you're going to be a dad? Tell my wife she's homeless now. I hung up before he could respond and immediately began phase 2 of what I decided to call Operation Full Disclosure. Vivien had conveniently left her laptop open on the kitchen counter with passwords saved on all accounts, email, social media, photo storage, everything accessible with a single click. It was almost as if she wanted to be caught. Or maybe she'd just become sloppy after months of secret planning. The email trail revealed the whole story. Garrett Blackwood, welding contractor, divorced father of 3, renting a duplex on the west side of town. They'd been seeing each other for 5 months. He thought she was separated. She thought he'd leave his ex-wife and start fresh. Both were wrong about many things, but the most intriguing emails were from the past 2 weeks. Vivien outlining her plan to get pregnant, to force the issue, to make Garrett realize they belonged together. Garrett's responses were less enthusiastic, though not entirely resistant. Apparently, he'd always wanted more children. Well, congratulations to them both. They were about to receive everything they had ever wished for. I spent the morning packing up Vivien's belongings, every single thing. Clothes, toiletries, books, the porcelain cat collection she'd started in college, her nursing textbook she'd held onto from school, her half of our wedding china. Every item marking Vivien Peach as a resident of this house went into boxes and trash bags with the methodical precision of someone who had spent 17 years observing her organizational habits. By noon, the house looked as though Vivien had never existed. Loading my pickup required 3 trips. Garrett's address was in a neighborhood I had driven past but never truly noticed. Modest duplexes, gravel driveways, boats and RVs parked on yards. The American dream scaled down to fit a blue-collar budget. Garrett's place had a well-kept lawn and a welding truck in the driveway that looked ready to survive an apocalypse. I was stacking boxes at his front door when it opened. "Can I help you?" The woman was maybe 35, brunette, wearing scrubs with cartoon prints. She carried the efficient look of someone managing multiple jobs while still attending her kids' soccer games. "Are you Mrs. Blackwood? Ex-Mrs. Blackwood, Stephanie? And you're Henry Peach?" Her face passed through several expressions before settling on grim understanding. "Oh, you're the husband," she said, almost in the past tense, as if that status had expired about 4 hours ago. She looked from the boxes to me and back again. "Is that all her stuff? Everything that matters?" "Garrett's home. He's at the shop, but he called about an hour ago. He said he needed to talk to me about Vivien, about maybe her staying here for a while." She hesitated. "He mentioned something about a baby." I nodded. "Vivien's planning a little surprise. Thought you should know before she arrives with her luggage and her reproductive agenda." Stephanie laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Reproductive agenda? Jesus Christ." "She punctured the condoms," I added. "This morning before she left for her so-called business trip. Thought you might warn Garrett that his girlfriend is making unilateral decisions about their future." Her son sat down on the front steps, as if his legs had given out. "She told me they were separated," Stephanie said. "I thought you two were already divorcing." News to me. Just yesterday morning I was happily married, bringing my wife coffee as she packed for a medical conference. Incredible how quickly life can change. We sat there quietly, two people whose worlds had been upended by someone else's lies. "So what now?" Stephanie asked. "Now Vivien gets to explain to Garrett why she's suddenly homeless, pregnant, and looking for a place to stay. And Garrett gets to explain to you why his separated girlfriend has suddenly become very available and very fertile. And you start over, 17 years older, wiser, and far more cynical about human nature." Stephanie picked up a box, examining the address label. "Vivien Peach. It sounds so ordinary when written out. She can keep the name if she wants. I'm done with it. What if she comes back? What if she realizes she made a mistake?" I stood, brushing off my jeans. "Stephanie, your ex-husband is about to discover that his girlfriend has been lying about her marital status, her birth control, and her living arrangements. My wife is about to find out that her boyfriend's ex-wife knows all about their affair, her pregnancy plans, and her sudden homelessness. And in roughly 6 hours, when Vivien calls from Chicago to check in on her devoted husband, she'll learn that devoted husbands don't wait around for women who try to get pregnant by other men." "That's not really an answer," she said. "Sure it is," I replied. "It's just not the answer she wants to hear." I gave Stephanie my phone number and told her to call if Vivien showed up searching for me. Then I drove back to my now empty house, opened a beer, and waited for the phone to ring. It did, at 7:23 p.m. "Hi, sweetheart. How was your day?" Vivien's voice was bright and cheerful, the voice of someone convinced she was still managing a double life successfully. She had no idea that her entire life had been relocated by her husband. "Educational," I said. "Very enlightening. How's the conference?" "Oh, you know how it is. Lots of lectures, lots of networking. The hotel is gorgeous. Incredible view of the lake. Very busy. Extremely busy, back-to-back seminars, learning so much about advanced patient care techniques, advanced methodologies. Sounds intensive. It is very hands-on. She giggled at her own joke. But enough about work. What did you do today? Cleaned the house, organized things, made calls. Very productive. That's wonderful, darling. I should go. Dinner presentation soon. Saints and Sinners theme, remember? Right? Moral boundaries lesson. Exactly. Love you. Love you too? No, Vivien. I mean it. That was the worst part. Even knowing everything I knew, even after spending the day boxing up her life, I still loved the woman I had married 17 years ago. I just didn't recognize who she had become. The second call came at 11:47 p.m. Henry. Vivien's voice was tight, scared, and confused. Yeah, I just got off the line with Garrett. Did you? How is he holding up? He said you called him. He said you told him about the baby. Well, I figured that was news an expectant father should hear directly. Congratulations, by the way. When's the due date? You might want to start counting from this weekend, assuming your plan works. Long pause. Then how did you know? About the punctured condoms, or that you'd been seeing a welding contractor for 5 months while claiming to volunteer at the church? Henry, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very inventive. Medical conferences, saints and sinners dinners, free pharmaceutical samples, a very imaginative narrative. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? Silence again. What do you mean? I mean, Garrett's ex-wife Stephanie is reasonable. We talked at length today while I was dropping off your belongings at Garrett's duplex. Turns out she had no clue Garrett was involved with a married woman. And she's not as forgiving about his extracurricular activities as you might have assumed. You delivered my what? My belongings? Everything, Vivien. Clothes, books, your grandmother's cat collection, your nursing textbooks. Everything that identified Vivien Peach is now sitting on Garrett's porch, waiting for him to decide what to do. You can't do that. That's my stuff. That's my home. Was your home? Was your stuff? Past tense, present tense. You're a single woman with a suitcase full of costumes and punctured condoms, calling your ex-husband from a hotel where you're pretending to attend a medical conference. Ex-husband? Did I mishear? Tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce, adultery, abandonment, fraud, the holy trinity of marital dissolution. My lawyer says it should be straightforward. Henry, please let me explain. Let me come home. We can work this out. Home is Garrett's duplex now. I suggest you call him and see if Stephanie's feeling cooperative. This is insane. You're insane. I'm being thorough. There's a difference. I could hear her breathing. Imagine her in some hotel room, calculating how her perfect plan had become a total disaster. What if I'm pregnant? She finally asked. Then Garrett's going to be a father, you'll be a single mother, and I'll be a divorced man who dodged a bullet. Seems like everyone is getting what they wanted. That's not what I wanted. Sure it is. You wanted excitement, passion, to feel desired by someone unaware of your flaws, quirks, and mundane Tuesday night habits. You wanted to be someone else, someone more interesting than Henry Peach's wife. Congratulations. Now you'll discover who that someone really is. Henry, Vivien, 17 years of marriage, you never lied to me, not once. Not about money, family, feelings, or anything that mattered. And then in 5 months you lied about everything. Where you were, who you were seeing, what you were doing, what you wanted. You even lied about birth control. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew you wanted to conceive with another man. That seems very specific to me. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen, Vivien? Were you planning to come home pregnant and claim it was a miracle? Leave Garrett and raise his child as mine? Keep lying until the baby resembled a welder instead of an accountant? No answer. Or were you just going to live 2 lives until one imploded? I thought I could figure it out. Well, congratulations. It's figured out. The third call came at 2:43 a.m. Henry, I'm at Garrett's house. How's that going? Stephanie won't let me in. She says Garrett isn't home, though his truck is in the driveway. Maybe he's not ready for visitors. All my belongings are still on the porch. It's starting to rain. Better move them inside somewhere. I don't have anywhere to put them. I don't have anywhere to go. For a moment, I almost felt pity, almost. Then I remembered the needle, the condoms, the 5 months of lies. Try a hotel, preferably one hosting a medical conference. Don't be a bastard, Henry. Don't be a cheating wife, Vivien. I made a mistake. You made 100 mistakes. The pregnancy thing wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate, a terrible plan, but intentional. I just wanted to feel wanted again, and now you know what it feels like to be unwanted. Educational, isn't it? She started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind used to get me to fix, buy, or forgive something. These were the tears of someone whose life had collapsed in ways they hadn't foreseen. Please, Henry, let me come home. Let me explain everything. There's nothing to explain. You wanted a different life, and now you have one. Congratulations. This isn't what I wanted. Then you should have thought about that before poking holes in condoms. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I drove past Garrett's duplex on my way to work. Vivien's Prius was on the street, and she was sitting on the front steps, surrounded by boxes and garbage bags. She looked like a refugee from her own life. I didn't stop. At lunch, I called Stephanie. How's it going over there? Complicated, she said. Garrett arrived around 1 a.m., completely drunk. He and Vivien had it out on the front lawn. Half the neighborhood heard them. Verdict? He doesn't want anything to do with her. She lied about being separated, lied about birth control, lied about everything. He told her to find somewhere else to stay, and Vivien was still sitting on my porch like a stray cat. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Don't. She made her choices. What if she really is pregnant? Then she'll figure it out. People do. You're really done with her, aren't you, Stephanie? I asked. If your ex-husband had spent 5 months lying about being single, then tried to conceive with another woman to force some decision, would you take him back? Point made. Vivien wanted to be someone else. Now she gets to find out who that someone is. That evening, Vivien appeared at my office. I was finishing some paperwork when she knocked. She looked awful. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, eyes red from crying. She looked like someone whose life had just imploded in ways she hadn't foreseen. Can we talk? She asked. We are talking. Can I sit? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat carefully, like unsure if it would hold her weight. I made a mistake, she said. Which one? The affair, the lies, the pregnancy scheme? All of it. Everything. I was selfish, stupid, and ruined everything good in my life. Yes, you did. Can you forgive me? I leaned back, studying the woman I'd been married to for 17 years. She looked like Vivien, sounded like Vivien, but she was a stranger. The Vivien I married wouldn't have cheated, wouldn't have lied, wouldn't have tried to get pregnant by another man. Vivien, do you know what I do for a living? I asked. You're a forensic accountant. I investigate financial fraud. People lie to me daily about transactions, assets, circumstances. And every day I separate fact from fiction. So when you claim you made a mistake, I know you're lying. When you say you were confused, I know you're lying. When you say you want to come home, I know you're lying. I'm not lying. You spent 5 months plotting to get pregnant by another man. That's not confusion. That's strategy. Terrible strategy, but intentional. She started crying again. I don't know what I was thinking. You thought you could have both lives, security with me and thrill with Garrett. You thought you could get pregnant and make it work. You thought you were smarter than everyone else. I was wrong, she whispered. Yes, you were wrong about everything. So what happens now? I asked. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. Divorce papers, signed and filed this morning. You can contest them if you want, but given the circumstances, it won't help you. She took the envelope as if it were a ticking bomb. Henry, please, we can do counseling. We can work this out. No, we can't because I don't trust you anymore. Every time you're late, make a call I don't recognize, or go to the store for milk, I'll wonder what you're really doing. You destroyed 17 years of marriage for 5 months of excitement. It wasn't about excitement. What was it about? I felt invisible, like I was just Henry's wife, not Vivien. Like I was disappearing into our routine, our marriage, our life. Garrett made me feel significant, and now I feel like nothing. I almost felt sorry for her then. Almost. But sympathy doesn't erase betrayal, and understanding doesn't excuse lies. Vivien, you were never invisible to me. You were my partner, my best friend, the person I chose to build a life with. If you felt unseen, you should have told me. If you needed excitement, we could have found it together. If you wanted significance, we could have worked on that. I tried to talk to you. No, you didn't. You decided I was the problem, Garrett was the solution, and you never included me in the conversation. I'm sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't restore 17 years of trust. Sorry doesn't erase that you were willing to let me raise another man's child. She sat there holding the divorce papers, finally understanding the full weight of what she had lost. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. I don't know, Vivien. That's your problem now. I don't have money. I have nowhere to stay. You have a job, friends, family, a car, a suitcase, all the freedom you wanted. I don't want freedom. I want to come home. Home doesn't want you back. She left the papers on my desk and walked out without another word. I watched through the window as she got into her Prius and drove away. For the first time in 3 days, I felt something other than anger. I felt relief. 6 months later, I was having coffee with Stephanie Blackwood at a diner downtown. How are you adjusting to single life? She asked. Better than expected. Quieter, but better. Any regrets about the divorce? No. About how I handled it sometimes. What would you have done differently? I stirred my coffee and thought, maybe I would have been less dramatic. Maybe I would have tried harder to understand why she acted as she did before deciding to punish her. But you still would have divorced her. Absolutely. Trust isn't something you can fix like a broken appliance. Once it's gone, it's gone. What about Vivien? Any idea how she's doing? She moved to Seattle and got a job at a hospital there. According to mutual friends, she's not pregnant, so either the punctured condoms failed or Garrett was more cautious than she expected. And Garrett? Still welding, still renting that duplex, still uninterested in complicated women with complex agendas. Stephanie laughed. Smart man, very smart. How about you? Any prospects? I'm taking a sabbatical from men for a while. Turns out they're more complicated than I imagined. Fair enough. We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd been collateral damage from other people's bad decisions, trying to figure out what came next. Henry, Stephanie said finally. Yeah? For what it's worth, I think Vivien was an idiot. Yeah, I admitted. She was, but she was my idiot for 17 years, and I miss that sometimes. The idiot or the 17 years? Both, I guess. The woman I married wasn't an idiot. She was smart, funny, kind, honest. I don't know when she became someone who would puncture condoms and lie about medical conferences. People change. Yeah, they do. The trick is figuring out if they changed into someone better or worse. And Vivien? I finished my coffee and left some money on the table. Vivien had changed into someone I didn't recognize. Maybe that person is better suited for someone else, but she wasn't better for me. I walked Stephanie to her car and drove home to my house, which finally felt like a home again instead of a crime scene. I'd rearranged furniture, painted the bedroom, replaced wedding photos with pictures of places I wanted to travel. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of possibility instead of lies. That felt like progress. Sometimes late at night, I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I could have handled Vivien's betrayal with more grace, more forgiveness, more understanding of whatever midlife crisis had turned my honest wife into a cheating stranger. But then I'd remember the needle, the condoms, the 5 months of lies, and realize that grace has limits. Forgiveness has boundaries. Understanding doesn't always lead to reconciliation. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone trying to destroy your life is let them go find their own way. Vivien had wanted to be someone different, someone exciting, someone worth lying for. Now she'd spend the rest of her life discovering who that someone really was. And I got to spend mine being grateful I didn't have to watch. The final twist came 8 months later on a Tuesday morning when Stephanie called me at work. Henry, you need to know something about Vivien. What now? She's back in town, and she's definitely pregnant. I sank into my office chair. How pregnant? Very, like about to give birth any day now. Garrett says it's not his. The timing doesn't work. She must have been seeing someone else too. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course she was. Vivien always was an overachiever. There's more. Stephanie said she'd been calling around town looking for anyone to take her in. Apparently things didn't work out in Seattle either. Let me guess. She told her new boyfriend she was divorced, got pregnant, and he realized she'd lied about something important. How did you know? Because people don't change, Stephanie. They just get better at lying to themselves about who they really are. She called me yesterday, asking if I thought I might take her back now that she's learned her lesson. And what did you tell her? Some lessons come too late to matter. Good advice. She's staying at the motel on Highway 9, room 247 if you're curious. I'm not. I didn't think so, but you should know. That evening, driving home, I found myself taking the long way past Highway 9. I told myself it was just curiosity, wanting to see how the story ended. But really, I needed to know my decision to walk away had been right. Vivien's Prius was outside room 247, looking as worn out as its owner probably was. Curtains drawn, but the blue glow of a TV flickered through the fabric. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine running, thinking about the woman inside. 17 years of marriage, 5 months of lies, and now she was alone and pregnant with a child who could belong to any man she'd deceived. I could have knocked, offered her a place to stay, tried to rebuild something from the wreckage of our marriage, but I didn't. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some trust once broken can't be repaired. Some people, once they show you who they really are, deserve to be believed. I drove home to my quiet house, my orderly life, my peaceful existence. It wasn't the life I planned when I married Vivien 17 years ago, but it was honest. It was real. It was mine. And for the first time since discovering the needle in those punctured condoms, that felt enough. 3 days later, Stephanie called. Vivien had given birth to a healthy baby girl. The father remained unknown. Paternity tests were pending. Vivien listed me, Henry Peach, on the birth certificate, but my lawyer was already filing to dispute that claim. You could request a test, Stephanie said. I don't need one, I replied. I know exactly when Vivien and I last slept together. It wasn't 9 months ago. So what happens to the baby? Not my problem anymore. And Vivien? Not my problem either. You really are done with her, aren't you, Stephanie? Some people spend their lives figuring out who they are. Vivien spent 5 months showing me exactly who she was. I just paid attention. And who was she? Someone who thought lying was easier than telling the truth. Someone who thought deception was simpler than honesty. Someone who thought she could have everything she wanted without paying any price. And now she gets to discover what that price actually was. I hung up, returning to my quiet Tuesday evening, my honest life, my peaceful existence. Across town, Vivien was learning to be a single mother with a questionable past and uncertain future. I felt neither sorry nor angry. I felt nothing. And that, I realized, was exactly how it should be. The woman I loved for 17 years died the moment she picked up that needle and started poking holes in those condoms. What remained was a stranger with her name and face, but not her heart, soul, or integrity. I had already mourned that death, grieved the loss, and buried the marriage. What happened to the stranger was none of my business.